And in 2007, we got the Global Award from Innovation at DEMA, and 2010, we got the European Award, and somewhere in between, we got our first defence contract. Now we supply...
Hello and welcome to the Big Scuba podcast. Welcome to a Little Big Chat edition. So this is about people coming on, talking to us about whatever they want to talk to us about, whether it's their new diver, where maybe they run a dive centre, maybe they've got a new line of wetsuits coming out, or maybe they've just completed a big project on marine science or something like that, and they want us to help spread that message. Doesn't matter, it's free, you know. They get 40 minutes to talk about them or whatever the subject is, and then we spread it. We put it on our YouTube channel, we put it on our Instagram, Facebook, social media, and then also all we ask is that they do the same across all their social media. And the more we share, the more it gets out there, and the more it helps to keep things ticking over. The other thing I would say as well, don't forget to subscribe. There's more of these coming. We do several of these a month, and that's a blackbird that's now joining us. Everybody wants to be on the show. What can we say? There we go. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to ring the bell, and that way you'll keep up to date with what's coming on. See you soon. Very quick introduction for me, for people who don't know me. I've been diving about 5 years in total, mainly in the UK, but I've dived in the Red Sea and Mexico as well. Been a dive master for about 3 years, and I'm volunteer dive master for our local centre in Norwich. Might go up to be an instructor at some stage, don't know, but at the moment I'm happy being a dive master. I've got 2 kids, and it's great getting them involved in things as well. And it's been great working with and getting Gemma into diving too, who's got hers now coming up. So Gemma, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm still a unqualified non-diver basically. I started my open water journey back in January and did my confined water in the pool, theory sessions, practicals, and then was obviously going to do my qualification, and then lockdown happened. So it's now booked for the second week of July. So hopefully I'll get that done, and then I'll be able to do some diving and get in the water with Ian as well. So buddy up. So yeah,
happened at the wrong time for you there, didn't it? Just happened at the wrong time.
Yes. Yeah, but I've been obviously spoken to a lot of amazing people through the podcast, and you know that's kind of been quite inspirational as well. Seeing how they've progressed with their journey as well, from young divers to some of the bigger names we've spoken to. So it's been good.
Excellent stuff. I'm John Routhley, Managing Director of Narked, as well as a few other companies that we have. Been diving 30 plus years, might be 35, something like that. Been lucky enough to dive all over the world, everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Apart from the Americas, actually, a bit in Cuba, but not much in America, but out in the Far East, New Zealand, Africa, of course, all across the Red Sea and around the UK.
Where's your favourite place to go?
Oh, you know what? I really, really, really loved Burma Banks. Yeah, that was amazing. And Similar Isles out in Thailand, I think, again, deep blue was really nice. I mean, Scapa Flow was amazing as well, of course, but for different reasons. You can get a bit bored looking at a reef. It's the same old fish. But you find a big hunk of metal on the bottom, and then that's something a little bit more special.
I bet.
But yeah, I mean, it's different reasons for different dives.
Yeah. So what about in the UK? Because, at the moment, none of us are going to be travelling very far, so for diving. So whereabouts in the UK, what would you say is your favourite one of your favourite places to dive?
Places that we're not allowed to dive, actually. I guess Dorothea Quarry.
Right.
In the early days, we did a lot of testing, so we'd use Stony Cove because that's very local to us. But again, that's more of a test pond for us when we're developing and making improvements. Don't get a great deal of time out now with the businesses. It's just full on for us most of the time. I think people see us as something different to what we actually are. But we'll explain that going through this. But I think Brent, Mr. Hudson has dived extensively UK and put up some very nice pieces which have been put in museums over the years. Mr. Hudson, would you like to come in?
Hi everybody. So I'm Brent Hudson, sort of the guy in the back room, John's business partner. Well, how did this all start? I mean, John and I met over 20 years ago now. So see all this grey hair. Even more than me. Have you noticed that? Yeah, I don't know whether I put him under more stress than he does me, but I'll take that. But, we met over 20 years ago. We've been talking over news groups. I mean, back then, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. You see, talk about feeling your age. And I remember it was the old Yahoo News group for the old Draeger list. And then it was the Northwest list as well. Do you remember that one, John? Mm-hmm. And we used to converse on there. So there was Tracy Robinette, Paul Ray Markers,
Dave Sutton, Dave Thompson.
Yeah, Dave Thompson, all the great names and stuff. And we used to chat about all sorts of stuff. If it wasn't constant mass flow orifices, or how are we going to use this with a bit of Parker, swage lock valving, and we cobbled stuff together out of bits of pipe work. And this was the 90s. It was a very long time ago where nothing existed on the market that you actually wanted to do the kind of dives you did. So we built our own, like most of the people on that list did. And obviously, you notice from those names, they all became significant manufacturers. Well, the same thing happened to us. And I met John at an inland quarry. First time I ever met him. I turned up with homemade rebreather. John had his bits, and mine fell apart on the first day. I think I forgot some bits or something like that. I can't even remember. And we had our first dive in a quarry together. But how it actually worked was that we'd think up these things and would make them. And I'd design something on CAD, and I'd give John the CAD. And he would go in his shed out the backyard, and he would make two, one for him, one for me. And we'd get on a boat, and people would look at this kit and they go, "That's brilliant. Where did you get that from? I want one." And suddenly we found ourselves with a business, And John had a website with a PayPal button. And, it's just like, it's the most embarrassing website in the world when we look back at it. We both said, but, that's how it actually all started. And in 2007, we got the Global Award from Innovation at DEMA. And 2010, we got the European Award. And somewhere in between, we got our first defense contract. Now we supply NATO Research, the FBI, National Oceanographic and Aeronautical Association, Royal Navy's their defense contractor Divex, BAE Systems. We worked with Global Combat Systems, Military Air, Subs and Insight. I've worked on the F-35D fighter project, the Successor class submarine, the new one Dreadnought. You name it, it's just grown. Pretty much every piece of electronics you're going to find on a rebreather has had some influence from what we've created.
I didn't realise you was involved in all that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What I say when people think we're a dive shop, but actually that's quite a long way off from what we really are as an engineering and consultancy business as well. We have our own test facilities for EMC, EMF testing. So actually we get called in on all sorts of projects, including medical and military.
So was you involved in the COVID? You've been involved in that?
Yeah, quite heavily, and we still are. So there's not a great deal we can say about that because we're in contract with some rather large medical companies, but not just in this country. Now things are calming down a little bit here. We're now working out in the States and as of last night in Brazil as well. So
Mexico, yeah. It was very near the very beginning of the COVID and ventilator and medical equipment that we got a call from national security asking obviously what our capabilities were. At the same time, there's a lot of people who work in the medical industry who are also scuba divers, as you know. So, for example, Dr. Simon Mitchell is a very good example.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Does it make you like nip your bum up a little bit when you get a phone call from someone like national security? Hello, I'm national security. We want to talk to you.
Well, I'll tell you actually,
what have I done?
It's actually quite funny because I remember the phone call from John saying, I've had a phone call from this guy and it came through the reception. They were like, yeah. They came to see John and they said, I've had a phone call from this guy, take a number, call him back. No, I really think you need to take this. So he took it. And of course, it was one of these people who have no website.
Yeah.
Yeah, you Google it and nothing exists for, you know.
We get some pretty strange phone calls here. You know, one day you'll have some general phone up and asking for strange requests, and you're thinking, is this real? You know, we've got, you know, some top brass on the phone to us, and it's just a little bit surreal some days. And then other days, you know, it's just a diver ringing up for an oxygen sensor.
Nice.
So we do have a complete mix. You know, when the FBI phoned us a couple of years ago,
It's a hoax.
yeah, but they never are. I mean, occasionally we'll get the police call us up, and you go, "Oh God, what am I in trouble for now?" And it'll be for an investigation. Can we look at the computer? You know, if somebody's had an accident, and can we diagnose equipment, or you know, look at the computers and download information? So you sort of get it all really.
So to check my understanding, then, if somebody has an accident with a rebreather, does it matter the brand? You know, if they have an accident and they don't make it back, sadly, do you guys then get asked by the police to investigate what actually the mechanics
Not really.
of the rebreather?
No, I mean we can do, but we don't generally get involved in that. We get involved with diagnosis of the computers and the logs and downloading information off computers that have been flooded or you know, destroyed for whatever reason. There's information that we can still pull off in conjunction with Shearwater and some of the other manufacturers. So we have quite a unique skill set, and we get called upon for all sorts of things.
How big is your company? How many people work for you?
Actually, I don't know.
14, 16 now.
Yeah,
16.
Yeah.
I mean, one of our favourite photos, and I'm just, well, I wish I could actually share it to you now because I haven't got screen sharing available on this. Oh dear, I'll have to just email it to you. We've got a photo of John and I with an Apache helicopter.
Really?
Yeah, so just trying to see if I can just grab that for you and I'll send it over.
We see them quite a bit around here because Watersham's not far from here. So we see the Apaches quite often around this way.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Watersham that was that, wasn't it? Right?
Sorry, what was that, buddy?
It was Watersham, wasn't it?
Yeah, Watersham Air Base, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's on its way to email to you right now. But there's John playing with an Apache helicopter. You know, sometimes it's strange where you get involved in. So we've done quite a few different projects over the years. I mean, you look at things like, even if you go back to VR Technologies and you look at the optical head-up display they had, the ORI, that's actually manufactured by us.
Is it?
Yeah.
Blimey.
ORI was manufactured by us.
Yeah.
Because I often think about that, because they're not very big, are they? You just get, but in the water, don't you? You know, it's not hard to see.
Oh, you're thinking about the NERD. That's the nerd from Shearwater, which is slightly different. You got one there?
Right.
No,
Okay.
it was an optical cell system, so it you had fibre optic.
Right. Yeah, I understand now. Yeah. Okay.
For most rebreather interfaces, if you're looking at any kind of third-party electronics, which interlinks with any rebreather, at some point along the lines, we've either designed it, manufactured, or supply it. Yeah, as far as rebreather interface,
achievement.
but we pioneered that, and I can't even remember when that was. I mean, going back to this, the history, and obviously explain the two awards. Oh, and there's the Outstanding Service to Industry Awards, runner-up as well in 2016. You got your plank of wood for that, didn't you, John?
Yeah, it looks like a cheese board.
Yeah.
Really?
Got that.
We'll send you the pictures of it. It's
I got an award on a plank of wood, but that's for a whole different achievement. That's for jumping in with your dry suit undone, that one.
Yeah, you got that award, did you?
The wooden weight belt. Good lad, yes.
Yeah.
If you go back and you start looking at other things we've done, European regulations is some of the things that I've been heavily involved in for decades now. One of our other businesses, we work on a machinery safety, risk assessment, certification and testing.
Right.
And one of the European regulations was the change of service for pressurized containers, cylinders. So, for example, if you have an acetylene tank, you're not allowed to use it then for propane. Sounds sensible, doesn't it? Yeah. So there's a European regulation that if you change the gas service of a cylinder, you have to have it recertified. But of course, the limits of that. So, okay, what about compressed air to nitrox? What about nitrox to trimix?
Yeah.
And that actually fell within the regulations that if you actually refilled a tank from compressed air or O2 and changed it to trimix, you have to recertify the tank. The regulations were explicit. And of course, I sat on the Health and Safety Executives Committees that wrote guidance documents and released to the public and industry. And we actually extensively campaigned and had dispensation for the diving industry introduced in that year. And that was us.
Oh, right, brilliant. That's good then.
You can change your tanks without having to get them recertified because we told them that it was ridiculous. Got a campaign and got it changed. Yeah, things like that.
It's good that you can get involved in these things, isn't it?
Well, you've got to look after your industry and you've got to look after your customers.
Have you ever dabbled with like 3D printing or carbon fiber?
Yeah, indeed. 3D printing doesn't have the structural capabilities. You know, it's great for conceptual, so you can look at something. Even the most high resolution, which is obviously expensive, they do a certain job. And you can get sintered metal, laser lithography. We've played with quite a few, but none of them actually manufacture a product to the strength required for a diver to literally abuse it on a boat.
Yeah. Or even in a time scale, you know, we've got a 3D printer here, we never use it. They're very, very slow, and the quality it's not product quality. So like Brent says, it's great to have an idea of what it's going to look like, but actually they're no use, certainly in our industry. But there is people putting rubbish out there in the diving industry that are using 3D printers. There's no strength, they're not waterproof. It's not good.
Yeah, it absorbs water, so the dimensional tolerances don't remain constant, and they don't have the strength. So here's what we do. It's very simple. We use CAD programs like SolidWorks, CamWorks. I mean, how much did we spend on SolidWorks?
11 grand, I think. 11,
yeah, just for a single computer program.
That's a big investment.
It is, but we can 3D model that. And more than that, because we use some of the add-on units to SolidWorks, and it is an extremely competent program, that we can actually physically model gas flow in the virtual environment. So a lot of our products, you know, we've seen in the past where people have made rebreather components with absolutely no consideration to how it's going to affect CO2 retention, worker breathing, and those kind of things, which are actually fundamental to the CE marking of that equipment. So we can model that flow. And one of the examples was, and if we go back a number of years to the very, very first ever rebreather controller using shear water electronics, and it was called the Deep Pursuit, which is one thing that we designed. I mean, we worked heavily in the very beginning, conceptual of these kind of ideas that move on. You know, Shearwater have always been an absolutely excellent, innovative company. And when you see those kind of products, you think, how can I make use of that?
Yeah.
You know, the Deep Pursuit was one of those. So Bruce and Lynn, you know, from the first controller they made, which was the size of a house brick,
it was,
you know, it's stainless steel on his wrist. You see the pictures of it, and you know, and it's not common.
Look at mobile phones at the same time.
Well, yeah, let's not talk about our age on that one again. We've been there. But of course, then they brought out the GF, which was quite large, but you know, it was really good. And of course, you've got Pursuit, Predator, Petrel, and you know, innovations have gone on with that. But in the very beginning, the very first ones, this is a GF, we incorporated that into something we called the Deep Pursuit. And between us, we put together the algorithm. So that one had a specific proportional integral derivative controller, which predicted the oxygen consumption of the diver in order to smooth out that control. So instead of getting spikes like a bang bang controller, if you're below set point, it injects. No, if you're below set point, what is the rate of change? And we inject enough so that it smooths out so it hits set point when you want it to. That kind of predictive stuff. That kind of innovation just wasn't there, you know? But it took someone like Bruce to come up with that and incorporate it into something that was reliable and simple and intuitive to use. And we incorporate that into the Deep Pursuit. And in order to make that actually work, we had to look at things. Now, you may have seen and heard underwater the beeping of cell alarms on rebreathers, specifically those rebreathers that have the beep beep that go off. Kind of annoying, isn't it? And what usually we found was at that time, back then, one of the cells may have run a little bit slower than another cell, which causes it to be out of tolerance when there's a large rate of change of O2 in the loop, which caused an alarm to go off.
Is that because somebody's breathing heavily?
And they were simply gas isn't mixing from the injection. The solenoid would inject the gas, but it wouldn't mix in the head correctly. So one of the cells wouldn't quite see that mix straight away until it'd been round the loop a couple of times, and that oxygen had obviously dispersed into a nice even concentration. So we looked at this and we actually virtually modeled the head in CAD and gave it gas flow, pressure differentials. And we actually found that by creating turbulence within the head on the cell tube which mounts those cells, we could actually cause it to mix. And we can actually cause gases within the rebreather loop to go supersonic if we wanted it to, by creating venturis and a wing effect. And what we actually did was we created a wing inside, a high pressure and a low pressure zone where it passes over, which causes turbulence. And that turbulence was centered around the cell faces, which stopped moisture building up on them and caused it to mix. And we were asked one day by a certain manufacturer, how the hell did you manage to do that?
They were being very suspicious, weren't they? They were on our stand at a dive show.
Why is it so stable?
Yeah, and I see his hand.
So when would this have been, roughly? How long ago?
Oh, 15 years. 15 years?
It's not all that long ago, is it really?
Mm.
And it just shows you how quickly it's all moved on and innovation has got involved and took over. And I often think that with things like war and virus, where there's been a big change, you get innovation, you get people who've got great minds come together. And this is one of them times, I think, potentially now, because a lot of people are doing these on-air conferences and getting together, sharing ideas. You might see new innovation, new ideas coming out.
Collaboration has always been important. I mean, if you go back to rebreather cells, if we talk around the, was it about 2010 when Teledyne pulled out the diving market?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was 2010. Obviously, there'd been a great deal of accidents, great deal proportionally, that Teledyne were not prepared to continually get involved in. They just weren't happy with the level of risk, and they decided to pull out the diving market. Teledyne were one of the most reliable oxygen cells on the market, although there were still failures. But it was our involvement with a gentleman by the name of John Lamb at the time.
Right.
And yeah, if you have a look at the Eurotech 2010, you'll see it was on our table there. John Lamb is a fantastic and probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the industry when it comes to oxygen cells. He wrote the book. It's 40 years he's been doing oxygen cell design, John?
Yeah,
So
more than 40 years now.
Yeah.
Would he been involved with someone like John Chatterton, who at the same time he was doing these dives, and he was telling us that he was doing, say, going down the Britannic, and he knew back then that chances are that rebreather wouldn't make it back.
Mm.
And he knew, and it was a case of, right, I've got to try and fix it somehow mid-dive.
Yeah, I've never met, but I've known of John, you know, most of my diving career, but I've never met the chap.
And I was thinking, do you know what? To do that, actually take on a big dive like that, first off, is you know, pretty major. And then to actually take that down, what we're talking in the sort of the early 90s, knowing that he's got a piece of kit that's keeping him alive, that's been hammered together. And although he had a bailout, he'd bail out, you know, but he's still, you know, go, all right, I've got to go down there and test it. Jill Hyneth, another one, telling us virtually the same thing.
I can tell you some stories about R&D and things that have occurred underwater with prototype kit. I'll come back to that after the John Lamb part.
Very great.
So, of course, we were involved with John Lamb, and obviously we knew just what his expertise is. And he recognized that you actually can make a diving sensor, which is phenomenally great, but he wasn't given the opportunity. So he decided to do it with themselves, and obviously we supported that and did do from the very, very beginning. So there was a market vacuum once Teledyne pulled out the market until the new cell came out, which obviously we were the first ones then to bring to market, which is a NEN-SL1 SMB cell, and obviously the Molex equivalent as well. And now pretty much every single rebreather except one uses that cell on the market now.
Yeah,
reliability is now no longer an issue.
10 minutes left.
Our failure rate on both sensors is like 0.02% of failure rate. I mean, it's that phenomenal stable sensor.
But coming back to talking about failures and building stuff underwater, because yeah, I often had a bag full of tools, and not to take the brass off the wreck, that's totally different, you know, but a bag full of tools to put stuff together. And of course, we were telling you before about that, you know, we worked with a lot of other companies helping to develop stuff. And one of them, there was a rebreather. There was a fairly phenomenal rebreather, brand new onto the market. And the whole thing was made of aluminium. So there was very little plastic in it. It was machined from one piece of aluminium. It was fantastic, and we're doing a lot of development on it. And obviously with our shearwater links, and obviously with the development of the shearwater controller into rebreathers, we were assisting with this. And remember, this is the first all-metal rebreather on the market. Anyway, so we've been working with prototypes, and I had a prototype, we did development, handed it back, we made changes, and, you know, between us we collaborated. And I dropped onto a wreck in about 55, 60 meters, something like that. Done all the checks beforehand on the boat, everything was working out fine. Remember that John and I have designed and built the control system of this rebreather. We know it intimately, you know, right down to the actual algorithm. When it's firing in oxygen, I know when and why. I got down to the bottom of the wreck, and I had a primary controller, a secondary controller, and a head-up display. So I had 9 cell readings at my disposal, and not one of them matched. Now you can imagine a primary cell failure. Okay, you got the other 2 to look at. We're talking about 9 readings, and not one of them matched. This is
What do you think?
Well, I'm sat there looking at it, thinking, well, this is a bit poor. This is certainly a bit sporty. Dill flush. Let's find out which one's right. None of them. Wow. So, you know, 50 to 60 meters on a wreck, sat there thinking, well, it was okay 5 minutes ago, and yet it's completely foobar now. Anyway, so afterwards, I came back to Narked 90 Towers, and I'm sat there. I dropped the rebreather on the bench and say to John, right, we've had a minor issue. Okay, you know, 9 cell readings completely different on a wreck at 60 meters, whatever it was. Yeah, minor issue, you know. And we had a look at it, and what John said, he looked at it, and he looked at the actual hose that went to the solenoid. So the actual hose connects on the solenoid, and the chrome plating was missing.
Ooh.
Now this is a brand new rebreather with brand new parts on, we built ourselves, and the chrome had been missing. And John looked at it, he said, that's been reverse electroplated off. And it was very simple what happened. That the 0 volt rail of the electronics, so if you're measuring an oxygen cell and it's putting out 9 to 13 millivolts in air, against what? Against 0. You've got a wet switch on the controller that tells you when you're in the water.
Yeah.
And that has to have a potential difference across those as well. Because the solenoid was mounted on a fully aluminium metal rebreather, part of the solenoid had connection to the water. When the solenoid fired, it put 7 volts into the water, and the distance between my wrist and the solenoid on the back was enough to pass current that changed the 0 volt rail and knocked out all the references.
Wow.
How would you ever find that? And the whole electronic system was then revised following that, and something that's never been seen before. And now you have a new safety system as a result.
Only because the chrome had been taken off one fitting.
Yeah, that's it.
Amazing, right?
That's the kind of stuff that happens every day. But somebody's got to be the crash test dummy, and that was usually me.
Have you had any near misses?
Yeah, one of those. Yeah, you know.
I've had a couple of CO2 hits testing equipment, and which has been pretty unpleasant. We built a new full face mask within Spyro, and it had a bailout valve on the front. And I was testing it up at Dorothea. Homemade electronics on the rebreather, this full face mask, and the bailout valve on the front. And switched the bailout valve, it was fine on the surface. Got to 10 meters, it was fine. Got to 50 meters, and I'll give it another try, and the bailout valve was totally seized. So I got my buddy at the time was hanging onto my head, trying to keep the mask in place and trying to bail me off this rebreather. And it's seized solid. I won't tell you the manufacturer of the bailout valve, but they're not around anymore. So we said, okay, if I can't bail off a rebreather without the whole thing flooding, then bin the dive, let's get out. You know, this is not funny anymore. So I had quite a rich helium mix in the rebreather. And helium had got down the cable into the handset that I had at the time, little homemade little box set. So as I was ascending, helium got down the cable, tried to expand in the electronics, and blew the front off. So now I'm on a rebreather that I couldn't bail out of with no electronics at 50 meters. So
Turns out that the seizing was because of the pressure. It was fine at the surface, but under the pressure when you got down there, the tolerances changed and it locked it up.
Yeah. I mean, all we had to do was sort of change the tolerance of the barrel inside this valve, and it was fine. But yeah, a bit of cold water and a hot gas in the middle. One contracted, one expanded, and it was seized solid. So
amazing.
I guess we shouldn't publicise these little near misses.
Yeah.
So do you have anything like, because we don't actually have all that log, oh, excuse me, and do you have anything you want to tell the listeners, anything new you've got coming out, people who know you, do you have any messages for them? You know, now's a good time to shout about anything you've got coming up, you want to, anyone, you know, you want to hear.
I mean, there's certainly some new products coming out. There's some sitting on my desk here that you can't see. I can't tell you what they are just yet because it's new and very different, and we don't want to give a shout out to the competition. But hopefully, it's a new beacon. It's a new type of strobe, but very different to what's on the market now. But other than that, I can't tell you what the super duper features are.
We're working new materials, new technology. It's going to be quite.
Is that something to look out for this year, or is that something to look out for next year?
We're just working on packaging now. As after this call's finished, I'll be back onto the packaging company to get a move on with that.
And this will appeal to people who've got rebreathers who are looking to upgrade?
Technical divers, wreck divers, really.
Right.
Well, it's first designed to get you back to the shot. I mean, in the early days, remember using the old Jotron JT4 strobes and the likes, and you tie them onto the shot line.
Yeah.
So you can find your way back without having to reel off in reasonable visibility. But obviously, none of these in the Jotron are actually depth rated by the manufacturer. They will do it, but nobody will say it'll do it. Right. You know, and you can carry 2 or 3 cheaper strobes in the hope that one of them survives. So the very first Pathfinder strobe was built and completely liquid filled, so it was ocean depth rated to make sure that you had something reliable to find back to the shot. So let's face it, if you don't find your way back to the shot on a deep wreck dive and you have to bag off, you could have 2 hours of decode to do, and that boat's got to follow you while you've got another set of divers on the trapeze.
Yeah.
That's not cool. That's not cool to have to bag off. So you want people to not have to bag off. So a reliable line clip that you can clip on and clip off, you know what? It came from the long line fishermen. Simple as that. And it's from the simplest designs. Yeah, when they just clip on the bait on a long line.
Keep it simple always worked, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Simplest always works. So that was the very first generation of Pathfinder.
A minute and a half left.
We're on to what, Gen 4, Gen 5. I mean, as far as my CAD drawings are concerned, it's actually Gen 8 because of the amount of ones that, well, that ain't going to work. But now the new one, Generation X, if you will.
Great. Very quickly.
New materials, new technology. It's going to be smart.
Okay. Smart. Where can people find you? New customers. Where do they need to come to look you up and find out what's going on?
Narked90.com. Remember, you spell it right. Narked at 90.
Naked at 90 is a really different website.
I bet. Don't go there. Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Anything else?
Oh yeah, but Facebook, Twitter, the works. Yeah.
What are you? What as Narked at 90?
Yeah, just Narked at 90.
Yeah, well, everything like that we'll share for you as well. So
I appreciate that.
That's been really interesting, and yeah, it'd be great to probably have you back to talk more.
Cool.
Yeah.
Don't forget to share your side as well. That'd be really great. Okay. And this will be coming out very soon. That might even be out later today. If not, it'll be out over the weekend. Okay.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah,
all right.
lovely
We'll pop you in. It's been good though. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, John. Thanks, friends.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.